It's good to be back. Apologies, I meant to get up the Warrior of Light challenge video, but didn't take from my phone for some reason. I hope to get it up by the end of the week, alongside, of course, the first Materia Cup of the season means there's going to be a tier list coming out from me. In the meantime, I want to do a little bit of the prep work to kind of get ahead, and let's do a deck list review. So currently we've had 3 Japanese Masters events and 1 Materia Cup. So I kind of wanted to go over these, and again, take some of these numbers with a grain of salt. These are different regions. Different regions have different regional metas, different things that happen. Excuse me, I've got something in my eye a little bit. And all of these are going to be different things. Like, for example, Japan was really, really big on the FF14 OTK aggro list, and I've never seen that ever at a US event, right? Which is funny, because I'm always told, like, oh, no, US just plays aggro, plays aggro, plays aggro. I kind of just don't see that, I'll be quite honest. Maybe I have different definitions of aggro, but, like, NA didn't really develop 13 outside of a certain Steve Sauce. I really don't, like, Megissa's more like, I mean, Megissa's aggro, and there's a lot of Megissa players, and Ice Lightning can be played aggro, but, like, I really think, like, Ice Lightning's more of, like, a mid-range deck. Like, it's on the aggro spectrum of mid-range, but it's not, like, the most aggro thing ever, and we don't tend to play combo decks here. There's very few other wind players in North America, so I really think we're kind of the realm of, like, mid-range to mid-range aggro. But these are the entrant numbers for the first Masters tourney. The most represented deck by far was Knights. We have a bit of Ice, Lightning, FF8, Soiree, 4-color Warrior of Light. I like that they always point out, by the way, one deck was completely full art. We'll take a look at that in a little bit, because it's kind of fun. 5 Warrior of Light lists. That is Earth, 4 mono Earth, 4 Giga Wall, 3 mono Ice, 3 Earth Water, continued on next page, and then a bunch of other stuff. Mono Fire had 2 decks, Mono Wind had 2 decks, one of which was entirely full arts, which I would be very interested to see, given that Chocobo is not in full art. That's Mono Lightning, Mono Water, Fire Water, or Fire Ice Dissidia, and Ice Lightning, and then a bunch of kind of one-ofs, which I'm not going to go super into. Oh, hey, Earth Wind FF15. My friend. This event was won by Air. We do have their list. It's right here. And I'm not going to lie, this is a very weird list to try to evaluate on the surface, because most NA players have started shifting over to using Bartz as an engine piece, and Bartz isn't in this list at all. There's benefits to both sides of this, actually. In my testing, I really like getting to multiple backups before committing to the Bartz. This deck doesn't have to worry about that. It's just expecting to go backup, Refia, and go. Which is really, really good if you expect a super aggro meta, which is what ended up happening there. The summons, they managed to stick in a fair number of EX Burst, Cucullin, and Kusith are just great anti-aggro cards. The 1 copy of Leviathan is great in conjunction with the 2 copies of Une. Une is kind of the standard Japanese, I want to avoid getting aggroed out card. You'll see it a lot in lists like this. She's kind of a big, beefy body that the opponent can't get over that also tends to generate value and, protect the field a little bit. It is interesting seeing this list basically untouched from the previous meta, honestly. There's really not a lot of changes here. Other than the Limit Break deck, which we'll get to in a little bit, because I think this is one of the most creative things that I've seen anybody do with the Warrior of Light list, which is the 1 copy of Onion Knight. Well, why is Onion Knight here? Well, it turns out, if you're in the Warrior of Light colors, the only Limit Break you really care about is Leo. Mott is, like, okay. Zac is okay. I would be shocked if you could ever actually resolve Shantoto in this list. And, like, Tidus is a great, like, kind of finisher if you don't have anything else to do, right? They'll use, like, a lot of extra slots over here. And one of the best things that you do need to do is survive against aggro. And Cloud is just the best Limit Break card in the game. I'm just kind of convinced of that. So what running the one copy of Onion Knight, this is probably just never intended to be cast. The text on it has no relevance. I mean, you could cast it for a bounce if you wanted to. What this really is this is a way to get to Cloud off of Tyro or Sarah FFL in a situation where Cloud saves the day. Cloud is also just really good in the mirror, as it turns out. Killing Refia for a pretty low rate ends up being worth it, even if you lose the Cloud in response. The one thing about this list, I will say, it's very threat light. If you have just perpetual removal, it might actually struggle to close games out. And maybe that's by design. Maybe it is able to just kind of mill the opponent out and doesn't search that much. But I would think between Tyro and Sarah and Ferris, I guess like Zidane could also maybe help mill the opponent out in a pinch. But be very interested to see, especially because like Tidus can't really be cast if you're falling behind on getting forwards out. So, like, if you're just getting perpetually, like, Hecaton sheared, right? This deck can't really do much about that. The other list that we have from that event, well, we have two of them. This is the mono full art list. It's pretty cool. I think it's some of the cooler stuff in here. Seeing a surprise Golbez. Again, Golbez is just access to Cloud for the most part. I mean, you can cast Golbez, and he's a good card. But he's a lot better when he's an EX burst that gets you access to any of your backups, gets you your Fiona or your Vaughn, or you get you Braska, or, plenty of options, right? Braska, the Brynhildr, Ixion, but a lot of it really is just trying to enable having access to Cloud. I also like the one copy of Lightning in here for the cheeky Ixion. The 3 Shinryus obviously make a lot of sense. This deck is, again, relatively low on forwards. So we're starting to see actually a lot more of this now. I mean, this deck is on 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 backups. And it's on a lot of summons as well. We're talking, our forward count really, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 19 forwards. It's very low on forwards. It's not really looking to do that. And the way to play defensively against all the aggro running around right now at the start of the Opus is running a lower forward count, running more backups to get those down consistently, and using your summons to control the game state until you get to the point of inevitability. I do wonder how many of the decisions in this list were made for the full art restriction. Cards like Fiona really haven't seen a lot of play lately, even though I do like Fiona. It's my favorite card of all time. A card like Dryad, I think, is like an interesting decision. I do wonder if it's like just there to counter Refia for a turn. Maybe that's like just good enough to be worth doing. But it also could just be that was the best wind summon that had a full art, right? Would they be playing Dorgan in the slot if they didn't just want full arts, for example? I don't really know. It's definitely interesting to see. And the last one, this one's kind of made the rounds a fair bit, but this is Knights with 6 backups. We're just spinning the slot machine, and this went actually undefeated in Swiss. So something interesting to note, Knights had the highest representation rate, but it also had the best conversion rate at the event. 4 of the 10 Knights players made top cut, and all of them lost in round 1 of top cut, which is interesting. I don't know how much stock to place in that. There is just kind of the chance of bad draws, but it does make me wonder if this deck can be countered if you know you're up against it in a best of 3 scenario, which is interesting. And in playtesting, I've played this deck a fair bit just to kind of see what's up with it. The difference in hands where you see Laswell off of Corilla versus the hands where you don't are just night and day. It's a completely different ballgame when Laswell's on the field versus when he's not. I do wonder a little bit how much this deck running into kind of a similar problems as Gigawall, or like FF8, where really could struggle into Amaterasu or Mistdragon, will end up kind of biting it. If you go for the Ramza onto targeting a Corilla and you just get Mistdragon out from under you, you might just lose the game on the spot. Maybe that's just what ends up happening in Top Cut, right? You just kind of hard mulligan for the Mistdragon and hope your opponent goes for a Ramza line. And they can play around it to some degree. And even like Amaterasu and Corilla isn't that bad because of the Renoas. And oh boy, Renoa is a card that if I'm seeing it in the meta, I know something is happening because you were trying to do something that's stupid. Never been a fan of this card since I started playing. Again, I only see it in decks that are trying to just poop out 5 forwards in 2 turns and kill you. So I don't think this card will ever get banned, but I would not be surprised. I would not be unhappy to see it go, or I guess get limited to 1 because it is a legend, I suppose. And they don't want to ban those. But yeah, it's the deck is very solid. He notes the Cyan is kind of here for the mirror match, which makes sense. If the Ramza break isn't online, Cyan can kill the entire field because there is no Ovelia to get the Corilla out of the way, which is notable. One thing I never realized until this list, by the way, Meath can search Amaterasu, which is very stupid and a little scary. So basically, like, you kind of hard mulligan for either Meath or Laswell. You play, or not Laswell, Larsa. Play them, get Corilla, or Ramza if you already got the Corilla. Play that, flip 5, and then just win the game, essentially. It's a pretty linear deck. Going over some of the other national events. So here we have, I don't know the, whatever that city is. 11 Knights, 7 Warriors of Light, 4 Mana Fire, a little bit of an uptick here. 4 Earth Water, which I imagine is starting to try to come in to counter the Warrior of Lights and the greedy color bases those decks are running. 3, that is Ice Lightning. 2 Mono Waters, that's Ice Lightning, FF8. Starting to kind of fall down a little bit in representation. Ice Water and 4 color Warrior of Light with 1 mono full art, and I will not look at that. I don't remember what won this event. Let me check that real quick. This was Kobe, right? This is Kobe. So the winner was Ice Lightning. I don't think I've seen a deck list for that. And then there should be one more tournament up here. What wins this one again? Gigawall. Okay, it's good to know ahead of time. The last Japanese event, 5 Ice Lightning, which is interesting because I don't think Ice Lightning is particularly well positioned against Warriors of Light. I mean, like, the Dull Freezing just doesn't work into Refia, but I mean, I guess like Cloud and Victora are really clean answers to Refia, so maybe that's why. 4, again, Knights showing up big. 3 Mono Fires. That's 3 Earth Lightning. Interesting. Not shown up in any other event. 2 Mono Lightning, Warriors of Light, and 2 Giga Wall, which includes the one that took the event. And, yeah, the Japanese meta, very interesting so far. Again, take it with a bit of a grain of salt. Don't expect to see all of these decks. I don't know how many players are going to be on some of these. Again, the US plays very different decks than what Japan plays, but it's good to kind of know at least what probably the most consistent region in the world is playing. Just given that they have more competitive events in general, they tend to have a pretty good grasp on what's going on, even if I don't always agree with their assessments. Lastly, we do have the Italian Materia Cup. Let's go ahead and close all those tabs. And you'll notice right off the bat, the first 4 decks look really similar. They're different decks, I will say that. These are not the same deck. The first 2 are what I call Refia Control, and these are 4 color good stuff decks. So let's take a look at the winning list real quick. First notable thing when this list came out is right here. This has 25 EX bursts in it. This is effectively just trying to play EX Soiree, but with a better package. Which, fair enough. You'll notice that we are playing the Bartz here, which is... I really like what Bartz brings to the deck. You see, like, we're still on 16 backups, but instead of playing 16 backups, we're just kind of replacing some of the, like, less good ones. You know, we're only on, like, 2 copies of Arc, for example. And the reason why is that we are okay just Bartzing for what we want, right? And Sarah does represent Bartz by itself, and Bartz can do at least 3 of them. You can go Bartz for Kryl, get it back. and then go for Lunith, and that guarantees those three, which are the big ones. You really want access to water and fire by the time you're done. Wind and earth are not as important. And then kind of the rest of this is just kind of filled out with, I mean, you've got like your Ferris, your Refias. We're on the full 3 arc forwards and 3 arc backups. I imagine the arc forward really is not played super often. I mean, I guess like arc backup is probably the last backup in the list. Like we have Sarah, Kryl, Lunith. It's like you always get those 3 on field, I imagine. It's like a fixed backup line. And then you probably are going to have Lena at some point when you get your 5th back. Like Lena's probably your 5th backup. So then like the arcs and the Tyros are kind of your flex spot. And I guess if you have Tyro, you can play the arc forward, which is nice. Kind of gets the Refia out of the way of cards like Hecaton Shear. But it's also just a really good EX burst, which is probably what I imagine it's here more for. Dusk is here because he can draw you a card. You know, he's fine. He's nothing, you know, amazing, but he's playable enough. One copy of Ingus. Kind of funny seeing this here. It searches Warrior of Light, I guess. But I really think this is more of an EX burst. Because the most it's going to get reduced is to 4. 4 CP EX is, or like Search of Warrior of Light is like okay. But it doesn't line up very well. Because then you have to like pitch 2, play Ingus. Because you can't really tap a backup for it in that situation, right? Something notable as well that I saw, we're on this Bahamut as our fire summon of choice over Amaterasu. This is entirely because of the EX icon next to it, which I get it, but I don't like it personally. 8K is a good number. Like, it does kill everything in Gigawall. I do wonder if you could get away with something like Ifrita instead. Like, if you're just saying, I'm going to get an EX burst, Ifrita is an EX burst that does go +1, which can matter and be important and good. This card's solid. I don't think this is ever a bad card to have, but I was very surprised when I saw the Bahamuts and saw that it was Opus 13 and not the Opus 21. No, Mist Dragon is interesting. Mist Dragon can be a little bit slow, but it can be so debilitating. Basically, you can just kind of turn cards in your opponent's deck into dead cards. Cards like Adia, Cypher, Gilgamesh BE, all these cards rely so heavily on the break zone. Even like cutting off something like a Lulu against a mono win list can sometimes just win the game for you on the spot. But, I mean, again, that would cut into our ability to get the 25 EX burst, which is, I guess, what our goal was by the time we were finished. Really interesting list. Minwoo coming back in is really interesting. I'm a little surprised to see this guy back. It's a good card, and we do have the ability to get the cost reduction. And something I have noticed is protecting Refia can be tricky, but this protects Refia from Cloud exactly, which is really nice. But we do also have the issue that we're still going to die to any kind of cleave effect. I do think like an 8K cleave is very well positioned against Warriors of Light. We do have this, which is, oh wow, it was a mirror match with the exact same 50. So kudos. Seems like they're probably testing partners then. 4 element good stuff. Some interesting things to note here. We have the Chelinka. Apparently we have Yuri in our Limit Break deck. She's always been like a fine card. I've never hated having her. And Yuri giving you access to, you know, actual monster break. Honestly, I really wish we would have just had that be the effect on Yuri. Just make him a 3 CP break a monster on entry. And I would have felt a lot better about the card. But when you're in a multi-element deck like this, you can afford it a lot easier. The Furion, always interesting to see, because the card is extremely powerful, but it's hard to actually threaten so much with Furion, because, I mean, our water and fire density just isn't particularly high. Same for a card like Vaughn. Cool to see the forward Lena start to show up, and it's funny, we're on the Claris King Tycoon package, but we actually have Ferris backup instead, which is kind of, because we have such a lower Warrior of Light count, we don't need to play the Ferris forward. We can play the backup, which is a 2 CP backup that could be okay if you really need it. You know, we've got a decent number of forwards we don't care about that much. And that enables us to run Lena. And Lena is very good when she is both a draw and a Famfred effect at the same time. 2 copies of Vossler, another new card showing up. 1 copy of Fusoya, or 2 copies of Fusoya. Shadow Lord coming in, probably to deal with the influx of tribal decks again. Can't wait to see kind of what ends up happening with all of this. Cards like Shadow Lord and Titan are going to kind of rotate around, I think, depending on which one's best. I still kind of like Neo X-Death in these slots, although I do understand that it's a little scary to play in a meta like this, but I just think that the coverage against like a monsters deck is important. For summons, we're on the full 3 Azura, 3 Cucullin, 3 Kusith, full 3 Mistdragon, and then 1 each of Amaterasu and Hecaton Shear. We can't search any summons, so I'm a little surprised to see the Heka and the Amat at such a low number of copies. We can recur them with Fusoya, I suppose. But we're not on like Iridia or anything to get the one we actually need. And we're on a Moogle engine to kind of help us guarantee our 4 colors. I don't think it's possible for us to color lock ourselves. It can be possible to lock ourselves out of Earth, I think, or out of Fire. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, no. Every 5 backups will let you cast Warrior of Light. So that's always a nice, definitely a cool thing. But again, like, these look similar on the element chart. And it's actually one of the bigger fears I have about Warrior of Light. And I've kind of had it since it was printed, which is that if it's ever good, you end up with kind of, it homogenizes the game a little bit. It's one of the reasons that Magic, I know, is very careful about cards that bridge colors so much, is because they really don't want things turning into just good stuff 5-color piles. And we're kind of at that point with 4-color Warrior of Light, on top of the other stupid stuff he ends up enabling. Here's a different list. This one's on Cecil and Shinryu. Interesting to see Dorgan showing up here. It seems like Dorgan was kind of intended for cast decks. I wonder how difficult it is to actually get the 3 cast for all of Dorgan's decks. But he might just be like decent utility, to be quite honest, that you can recur with the Kryl that's not in the deck on the side. So ignore that. Vossler showing up again. Again, I guess just more copies of Claris is a good thing. The 1 copy of Gilgamesh, the 1 copy of Enkidu. I don't know. To me, this reads like, if you're going to play this, you might as well go more in on the Gilgamesh. Or find, like, you know, other good stuff cards. Like, we're only on 2 Zidane. You could bump the Zidane to 2, bump the Rosa to 2, or add, like, a Sage instead, if that's important. Or something like an Une could be really cool. Our summons were on, you know, 2s across the board, and then the 3 Amaterasu. Pretty normal. Brynhilder's actually really nice to deal with Bart's specifically. It's very punishing to go for Bart and then have Bart's get Brynhilder because he can't protect himself from summons, and now your whole strategy of using Bart's to kind of filter towards your endgame just doesn't work anymore, right? And again, by the way, Ferris backup showing up so we can play the Lena forward. Alright, let's take a look at some of the other interesting stuff. Mono Fire. This is a warrior package, hence the Firion and the Yuzuki. Obviously, we're going to try to race to 5 backups here. So we're on Miyu, Mutsuki. Surprised to see no Clara, to be quite honest. Just to have the extra name. Like, if you draw the Mutsuki, you could get 3 backups. Even if none of them have text, it's just so important in any deck like this to do that. 2 Selfie, the Joseph. Joseph's just so good. With, like, the guy, Joseph, Firion Loop is so strong. Meath. Surprised to see new Meath, actually, over an older one. Mont Blanc, you know, generally decent card. Culinarian, you want to race your backups out. Red 13, pretty good value across the board. I wonder if this is the right Red 13. They might actually have this in wrong. Zonde, again, just kind of a way of killing a Refia, and then Princess Goblin, so we can search a backup with our Goblin package. The Phoenix. The Goblins are, of course, incredible with Jekt, which I'm amazed is only at 2 copies. That card seems like just an automatic 3 of. Just deals with so many problem cards while just being a huge butthead on his own. Marowit's an interesting one. Does Marowith do... Yeah, just one forward. The Terra, one copy of Minwu. There's some really cool stuff you can do with her and Montleonis, so not too surprising. The full 3 copies of Ward, the Lunas, the Ace. This is a pretty solid mono fire good stuff list. The 3 Amaterasus, Belias, and the 3 Ifrits. Just like what I think actually have pretty solid matchups into some of what people are playing as well. The Ifrits, such a natural answer to the Bart's Turbo stuff. Amaterasu on Refia can just end the game potentially. Demon's a great card. And we do have the ability to like revive like what Tyvis Minwu is probably our intended resurrection targets for Montleonis. I'm surprised to not see like one copy of Hien. Just seems like a really powerful thing to go Montleonis, revive Hien, attack, untap, attack again, and just kind of win the game. Like one copy of that, one copy of like say like an Alfino, for instance. You could revive both of them. Alfino gets the search on entry, which is cool because you get like something to replace the backup you lost. Swing Alfino, swing Hien, activate them both. Swing Alfino, swing Hien. It's 4 points of damage off of a Montleonis. Alright, moving right along. So here's a deck that got a lot of buzz. I remember this list came out and I was talking with Travis. He was like, I can't believe they're putting Odin in their mono win deck just to try to spike it off of an EX burst. I will tell you right now, this is not in here as an EX burst. This is actually just playing Cloud. The Limit Break deck for mono wind is so like boring that you would cast Cloud twice in a lot of games before you really need your ace. And turns out, break a forward, like if there was a card that was 2 CP, break a 3 cost or less, with an 8k butt, that also had EX break anything, Mono Wind would play that card. Especially because like Mono Wind is so hurting for EX burst. Like looking at this list, it's like you get Alexander, you can draw a card, we can do a little bit of damage. You can like do Chocobo and flip 3 and draw off of that maybe, or like Chocomog, go get a Moogle 11 to try to stabilize on the next turn. Wind's EXs are just not very good. So running a card like this can actually be really good. And I would consider something like a Golbez in this slot, but there is value in the fact that Lulu can get back Odin, and that allows you to cast Cloud a second time later on in the game. Sure, Dryad probably does a lot of what Cloud does, but I don't think the utility isn't there. And I think that that's enough of a reason to maybe consider having Odin over something like the Golbez. So I think it's a really interesting list. I have not been impressed with Dorgan in my testing. I really just think that like 4 CP means he's a really awkward third cast. A lot of times you kind of have like 1 to 2 backups there. Oh, one other thing. I would not be surprised to see Mono Wind maybe even go, instead of this, for something like a Remora. Just because Leo is actually a card that Mono Wind would love to unironically play. I would almost like not be surprised to see Philo start to show up in Mono Wind just as a way to cast Leo and always have access to additional casts. Going through the rest of this, we're on a full 3 Luso, which is non-standard. Like, it's a pretty non-standard list, honestly, all things considered, for a deck that most people have. There's a really standard mono win list with the Alex Hancock's build, and this is not really following it very well, which is kind of interesting. Monsters are the exact. We have the Chocomogs, though, which is very different. We have the Moogle 11s. We don't have... oh, this might be the wrong Chocomog, now that I think about it. This is actually the wrong Chocomog. So that's normal, but like Fiona is not standard. No Chocobo Sam whatsoever. We're just looking to Chocomog or hard draw Fat Chocobo. And no backup Chocobo for it. So if you draw it and you've already drawn a Chocolate, that engine's just straight up dead. Pavlov in here again, which is also kind of non-standard. The full 3 Carpenters. Most of the lists that I've seen early on too. No copies of Nash, which has started to show up in Mono Wind to punish cards like Tyro or Sarah FFL. Definitely an interesting list, but yeah, the Odin in here really is not meant to be like just an EX bomb. I think this is a really calculated decision. And one that, unfortunately, Square Enix kind of enabled when they made Yuri just completely unplayable. I really don't... I know what they were thinking with Yuri. They were thinking that we're giving a cast deck an extra a couple of cards in hand. But like even like 4CP Break a Monster wouldn't have broken Mono Wind, I don't think, any more so than, you know, Montleonis. And like Ace is such a conservative card given how that much he actually costs. That like just a one unironically castable Wind forward wouldn't have killed them in the Limit Break deck. So yeah, that's why Odin's here. It's not here. I mean, it's here to be a EX bomb, but it's also here because Mono Wind would consider Cloud if they had access to him. We have a soiree list. Very interesting, actually. I see one Cecil, two Shinryu. We're kind of a little all over the place, actually, here. Gilgamesh is great in here. Kind of get that. See the Lena showing up in here as well. I've heard Lena's actually, this is her best home by far. Only two Zidane's a little surprising. Irwin, I saw fall out of a lot of these lists eventually, so a little surprised to see him back in. Only the one Mist Dragon, no Amaterasu. It's an interesting list. One Shantoto only. It's kind of interesting as well. We do have the Shinryu access. Shinryu is not standard in Soiree to my knowledge, so that's also interesting. And then lastly, we have Earth Lightning. This deck cracks me up, because this deck is looking to do one thing and one thing only, and that's basically stick a couple Scions, protect the board, and then probably like protect the X-Death. I probably got the dog barking in the background. Apologies for that. But again, we're just kind of controlling the board state. The two Echoes, I'm almost surprised this isn't at 3, to be quite honest. You know, we can break backups, try to stop Ruffia from doing her thing. Ixion is so rough for a lot of the decks right now. Rydia, Seymour. We've got only 10 EXs. I'm a little surprised the number's that low. Gestal, very good card. We have Reeve and Vincent. So we actually have Earth that gets Lightning and Lightning that gets Earth, which is really cool. It's a neat list. And with that, that is the deck list review. Stay tuned for a tier list in the near future, and I'll see y'all in the next one.